First announcement is we had an executive session today at 5:30 this afternoon to discuss real estate and personnel. The second thing on the agenda is the agricultural security area renewal hearing.
I move that the West Vincent Township adopt resolution 24-2017 approving the renewal of the West Vincent Township agricultural security area, together with approving the addition of the properties at Camp Hill Village, number 25-4-107, and the West Vincent Township parcel 25-6-59.1, and that the township staff, solicitor, and supervisor be authorized to take necessary steps for such approval.
Second.
Before you vote on that, we have to have a hearing. And I'll open a hearing at this time, introduce into the record Board Exhibit 1, the legal notice, Board Exhibit 2, letter to the Mercury dated October 23, 2017. Board Exhibit 3, the proof of publication dated November 6, 2017. Board Exhibit 4, the resolution. Board Exhibit 5, the letter to the Chester County Planning Commission. Board Exhibit 6, the West Vincent Township Planning Commission minutes. Board Exhibit 7, the West Vincent Township Agricultural meeting minutes. And with that, is there any comments from the board? Hearing none, any comments for the audience? Questions or comments? Hearing and seeing none, we'll close the hearing, reconvene into the public meeting portion of the agenda. This resolution is now in position for your consideration.
Okay. Well, we have a motion before us, and we've got to approve it.
We got a second. Yeah.
We'll give the audience one more chance for a comment on this. Seeing none, I'll call for vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Good work.
What's that?
Good work. One thing off the list.
Oh, we can go home now.
You wish.
It'd be nice.
Next is the approval of the minutes from the November 6, 2017 meeting.
I move to approve the minutes from November 6, 2017 as submitted.
Second.
Any comments from the audience on the minutes from the previous meeting? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next is the police report. Sergeant Russell, you're up.
During the month of October, the West Vincent Township Police Department responded to 206 calls for service, including the following: the arrest of a 24-year-old male from Philadelphia for theft by deception, criminal conspiracy, deceptive business, criminal mischief, and home improvement fraud after the victim was scammed by a driveway seal coat company. Also, the investigation of a bad check written to a business in the 1000 block of Pottstown Pike. That's all.
Thank you. Any questions for Sergeant Russell? Thank you. Next is approval of the bills list. Tonight the bills list is it's a big number. $271,487.76. The reimbursable bills list is $898,683.08. The subdivision utility plant bills list is $4,440.67. Combined total of all three bills list is $1,174,611.51.
I move that the board approves bills list dated November 20, 2017, in the total amount of $1,174,611.51.
Second.
Any questions on the bills list? Breeze them right along. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next item is a letter from Weatherstone HOA. I haven't had a chance to read this. Thanking Chief Swinter and the police department for sponsoring the Cool Off with Cops event that happened on November 7th. How did I miss that? Is Sergeant Russell still in the room? No.
What was it?
What was
It was
that?
held back in August to do a little community development proactively with the children in Weatherstone.
So did they hose them down or something? What was?
Water ice, I think.
Okay. Just wondered what the cool off part was.
Yeah.
The next item is the Courts of Chester Springs Poultry Division, escrow release recommendation number 1.
I move to approve Holsey's escrow reduction number 1 for the Bruner Land Development Phase 2A, total amount of $997,664.58, and for Phase 2B site improvements in the total amount of $348,463.06.
Is there a second?
As recommended by Cedar Engineering, second.
Brian, you have any comments on this? Did we meet with your approval?
Yes, we conducted all the appropriate inspections and verified all the quantities requested, and that's why we issued the letter recommending release.
Great, but we like hearing it from you. Any questions on this? Seeing none, I'll call for vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next is the Weatherstone Daycare final approval.
I make a motion that the board approve resolution 26-2017, authorizing the final decision for the land development plan for the Weatherstone Daycare.
Second.
Erica, you want to give a shot at explaining what this is?
Sure.
Or should I call on somebody from the planning commission?
Oh, it's fine. Sure. Pursuant to the settlement agreement, Henkin had approached the township to construct a daycare within the Phase 1 portion of the Weatherstone property. It's right across from the current library and commercial area there. So they had gone through the planning commission and they received a recommendation, and there are certain conditions of the plan approval which are integrated here in this resolution.
Sarah?
I'm wondering why it needs to be a resolution. I don't recollect you always needed to do a resolution to do a plan approval.
We started doing
Yes.
resolutions when I was appointed, and the reason for that
We just
is-
haven't had many since then, huh?
That's right, and the reason why I do it is because it lays out in the resolution everything that's due, the fees that are due, the easements involved, the land development agreements, so when staff gets a plan in for recordation, they just look at the resolution to make sure everything is covered, because the resolution is the guide to say that everything is covered.
And so if we had done that for the Benner Farm historic property, some of those things that the supervisors required would not have been overlooked.
Yeah, it puts everything in one document. So a document will say contingent upon satisfying engineer's review letter dated X. So staff knows, go to engineer's review letter dated X and make sure everything is done. So it's one document that memorializes everything encompassed in the
I'll be
approval.
keeping my fingers crossed. Thank you.
Any other questions from the audience? Seeing none, I'll call for, did you read the, call for a vote on the approval of this resolution? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Neil Fisher, I didn't see you sit there. You leaving us, or you not staying for the rest of the meeting?
That was as much fun as you wanted.
Next is a presentation by PFM. 2.5 years ago, the short story is we decided to look into selling our sewage and water systems. And you've done this presentation once before. This is the wrapping end of it, and we're going to turn it over, and they have a slide presentation for you. And there'll be questions you can direct to them afterwards. Thank you.
You need a chair up there.
You want us to move?
I don't know, I gotta figure this technology out.
Yeah,
I've got
that's
hard copies, if anybody wants this. Help you good?
Want me to slide the chair back over?
Oh, no, no.
Alright, thank you.
Mouse, Erica will do your mouse. Okay.
All right, well, again, good evening, everyone. Maybe first we'll just start out with an introduction of our team. You know, Chairman mentioned this is kind of, the process started about 2.5 years ago. The township formed a very good team. We'll just kind of go through a quick introduction to analyze things and go through the process that we're here to discuss this evening. So obviously from the township administration, both Eric and Tammy did a wonderful job sort of leading the efforts with this from the township side and providing a ton of information to help us move through this process. And of course we have your solicitor, Joe and Rob, helping out. Brian's done an incredible job from Cedarville, again, getting us a bunch of information, answering a lot of questions from the bidding teams. You have myself, Scott Shear, and Ben Kappenstein. Tonight, John Fry was not able to attend, and then from Dilworth Paxson, Special Transaction Counsel, we have Tom Wyatt over here as well to assist in any questions for later. So again, I just wanted to introduce the whole team. This was kind of a team effort here, and so we're proud to have formed this team. Hopefully, you know, with the information that we have this evening, you know, you'll see it as good results as well. Maybe go back to slide 1, the prior slide.
Prior slide.
So one of the things that we started out in discussions with the township, sort of why are we looking at this and what are the overall goals? And you know, there are obviously many different things that we were discussing, but you know, I think the top one is pretty important. It's just not West Vincent, but we're seeing this from a lot of municipalities around the state right now, that there's just an overall desire to look at exiting the sewer and water business. And instead, you know, right now budgets are tough, and they want to, a lot of different entities want to focus their resources and attention on other core governmental functions to run the township efficiently. So again, this is not unique to West Vincent. We're seeing this all around the state and all around the country as well. And while doing so, you know, I think the middle point is extremely important, where throughout the discussions from day one, we were always very cognizant of the rates and wanted to make sure that the rates were kept at very manageable levels. So in doing this, we didn't want to see the rates skyrocket. We wanted to keep things under control, but also knowing that there was going to need to be in the very near future some pretty significant capital improvements into the system, which were more likely or could drive rates up. So you know, it's a balancing that we were all trying to kind of get a good resolution to, keeping rates at a very affordable level, not seeing significant increases, but also trying to maintain the system in good order to provide good resources for the sewer and water sources. And then lastly, to generate some upfront proceeds, which if the sale does go through, there will be a lot more discussions with the township on the final deployment of those proceeds. We can go back to slide 4, please. So as far as the system overview, just to get everyone reacclimated with the system, we won't get into a lot of detail, but just kind of very high level. But right now, the system is comprised of 5 different systems, 5 different wastewater systems. Another system is expected to come online in the very near future, but at this point, it is not. The township also owns and operates a water treatment plant in State Stevens Green. That's a very small component of this. The township currently has no employees solely dedicated to the system, and the system has been maintained by third-party operators, and the billing is currently done by the township. So again, it just kind of gives you, in the pie chart down on the bottom right, now it's a little hard to see the overall number of EDUs or customers in each one of the 5 different systems, just to kind of give you an idea of the system. Slide 5. So as far as the timeline of events, you know, slide 5, we tried to put this in a very high-level format for everybody, but we wanted to have the township go through a competitive process with this to explore all the different options and ultimately come to the conclusion that we're at tonight. So, you know, again, this process started about 2.5 years ago, but in the first box, In September of 16, basically latter part of 16 through early 17, there was a lot of due diligence and prep work done by the entire team to just kind of analyze the system, get some general initial feedback from some of the potential investors out there, and again, do more of our homework of the system. Then, in March of 2017, the next box over is where the RFQ, or request for qualifications, was sent out to a list that we have to about 150 to 200 different interested parties around the state and around the country that, again, have interest in and are good operators and can do this business well. Some like the large systems, some like the smaller systems, kind of a mixture. But again, we send it out to our list of folks that we know have interest and have the capability of doing this. The responses that we got from that RFQ, the township then shortlisted, basically picked 3 of the bidders and pre-qualified them to continue through the process. So then in April of this year, we had meetings here in this room with the administration, solicitor, kind of the whole team, and brought in each one of the bidding teams and basically had a couple-hour session with them talking about the different aspects of the system, the financial areas of it. Also took them on a tour of the system to kind of have actually see what's going on out there. It was very informative. I think it was very informative from the team standpoint and also from the bidder standpoint, just kind of learn more about the system and get some other thoughts from the bidding teams as well. So a lot of time and prep work went into those April bidding meetings. Then shortly thereafter, in the green box, or the light green box, in May of 2017, the team released a draft asset purchase agreement, which again is just a draft document. And this asset purchase agreement is basically the binding document, a binding agreement between the township and a potential buyer of the system. And it kind of outlines all the different terms. And we put that out on draft form, socialize it with the bidders, and again, keep having some dialogue with them to learn what may or may not work for this particular system. Obviously, every sale or potential sale, exploration of it is different, and there's nuances, so we wanted to, again, get feedback from the different bidding teams. So it's kind of at that point where, once we were having more of those discussions, the team internally was looking at drafting the asset purchase agreement. We, again, trying to adhere to the township's goals and purposes of kind of balancing, you see it in the box down on the left, kind of focusing on the dollar amount that township could potentially gain from this sale, as well as with future rates. And also not just where rates may be going in the future, but the certainty of some kind of rate freeze. And what we were looking at here was a 5-year rate freeze that we were wanting to have discussions with the bidders. And again, through the rate freeze, through the dollar amount, through the other system that will be coming online, maybe next year, the Bruner system, there were different unique aspects of the system that I think at that point, it was the conclusion of the team to then start having some more dialogue with one of the bidders in particular, and that was the municipal authority, Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority, who was one of the pre-qualified bidders. And again, we were really trying to, at the end of the day, it's what's in the best interest for the township, what's in the best interest of the ratepayers of the township. And so that's, again, where we started to concentrate more of the discussions with that one entity, again, out of Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority, and we'll get a little bit more into that. So then in the box from the second to the right, from July through October, we had some meetings, discussions with Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority to negotiate a deal structure. The engineer did a great job. One of the things that I think was a good overall kind of good result of this process was getting a very good inventory of the system. Again, Brian and his team did a great job wanting to make sure we knew exactly all the different aspects of the system and what would kind of knowing exactly what's going to be potentially transferred to the ultimate buyer. So that's a very good process that needed to be done as well. Then last month we received an offer from Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority, which we're going to get into a little bit more. So we wanted to keep this process. We started with this competitive process, started sending it out to about 150 to 200 different potential investors, narrowed it down to 3, and then ultimately narrowed it down to this one. Again, we'll get into a little bit more information on that. Again, I think it came to the flexibility of of what Bucks can offer for the municipal authority and non-regulated company and the overall township goals here. Go to page 6.
Yes, I found it.
So the offer
Not
that
so
was
entrenched.
the offer that was received from Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority was for $4 million. The township has no debt to pay off, which is typically a requirement at closing of a transaction to make sure any debt related to the system is paid off at that time. Here we do not have that concern. The township is able to keep all the proceeds, therefore net of the transaction costs. And again, as far as what the township will be utilizing those proceeds for, that's to be determined at a later date. Initial analyses have been done, but again, once we get further down the process is when we'll ramp up those efforts to look more at the ultimate use of the proceeds. The second point, there is a guaranteed 5-year rate freeze in the current agreement with Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority, after which then the rates would be the greater of the then current West Vincent rates or Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority rates. So again, we feel like it's a guaranteed.
Do you have questions along the way, or do you want us to wait for your presentation?
Wait till you.
Yeah, well, if you don't mind, we'll wait till the end. So again, it comes with a guaranteed rate freeze of 5 years, but more than likely it will be substantially longer than that based on the rate regimes of Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority at the moment. The third point I think is also very important. Matthews Meadows and Stonecroft Systems, their rates will be lowered to $255 per quarter. You see what the current rates are right now, $336 per quarter for Matthew Meadows and $375 per quarter for Stonecroft. So again, those two, which are the two on the high end of the 5 different systems, will be reduced to the $255 quarter, which will be in line with the Bruner system that will be coming online next year as well. And then the last point, the authority will be given the sewer utility franchise of the entire township with the Township's Act 537 claims as well as all future 537 claims. So it's kind of a very, very clean offer that Bucks County submitted. Page 7, just a couple other highlights as far as the sale with Bucks County Water and Sewer. Again, the top one I think is very important. We're able to establish this longer rate freeze, this 5-year guaranteed rate freeze, and potentially have a lower estimated rate trajectory in the future, which again, I think is very important. With the PUC regulated companies, just because they're governed by the PUC, some of it's sort of out of their hands. That kind of lengthy rate freeze is less certain. There's, again, some things that are just outside of the regulated company's control, that a 5-year rate freeze is probably going to be too long, or it's going to raise the eyebrows of the PUC. So again, the Bucks County proposal just provided that additional flexibility to meet the township's goals. Just a little history on Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority's rate. When you look at their compound annual growth rate over the last 20 years, the rate increase has been about 1.1%. Over the last 10 years, about 0.17%. So it just gives you an idea. I mean, we can't guarantee where things are going to be in the future, but if you just look at the last 10 to 20 years, the actual rate increase was, you see here, about 1% or less than 1% over those respective time periods. Page 8, some other benefits. Again, Bucks County, all 3 of the pre-qualified teams were very good teams, very experienced, very well qualified. Bucks County Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority is a very experienced operator. They have the technical expertise and efficiencies that the township is looking for, conducts best industry practices. So again, the 3 teams that were narrowed down to, very excellent, great quality. So again, Bucks County was right in line with the other 2. Second bullet point, the township can reallocate any of its resources, specifically employee time that's currently being used on the sewer and water operations, to other areas of the township. Again, kind of going back to the initial goal of focusing on some of the core government functions. The third point, retaining any cash that's currently available. Again, there's going to be further discussion with that down the road. And lastly, with an entity like Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority, It will lead us to potentially a very short closing time, since there is no PUC approval needed. With that, so potentially this transaction could close, maybe 2 to 3 months, somewhere in that ballpark. With a PUC regulated company, it could be maybe up to a year, depending on the circumstances. So again, it just lead to the township receiving money a little bit quicker. And then on page 9, just a few highlights of Bucks County Water and Sewer. Some of their highlights, they are one of the largest nonprofit water and sewer authorities in Pennsylvania. They service about 92,000 customers, representing over 500,000 individuals. They manage a lot of different assets, over 100 pumping stations, 1,200 miles of water and sanitary piping, and 4 different treatment plants. Very experienced staff, and again, implement the state-of-the-art equipment and technology. So again, the entity that you'd be dealing with going forward is a very reputable, very well-experienced operator that's been in the business for quite some time. And then lastly, on page 10, as far as the projected closing time, if everything moves forward, this evening we have our presentation of the offer. Then Monday, December 4th, could be the potential vote for the offer, and then basically the rest of December through January is when we'd be conducting all the remaining kind of checklist items to get us to closing, and then January 31st would be a potential target for closing. Again, that's still in flux a little bit, but that's what we'd be targeting if you decide to move forward. So that's sort of the highlights of the transaction. I think now we're happy to entertain any questions that you may have.
Before you do, could you you kind of glossed over our systems. They're not optimum systems as we have discussed in the past because of the cost to build them and the low number of houses that are hooked up to them. And you kind of glossed over that. So why did we have 103 bidders?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very unique system. I mean, we've seen some very large systems, $200 million plus type systems. We've also seen some, smaller systems kind of in this range, $2, $3, $4, $5 million systems. But I think this one is, kind of rather unique. It's probably the most unique one that we've dealt with. As far as the overall type of system it is, and how it's, it's kind of 5 different systems. Soon to be 6 different systems plus the water system, and just feedback that we heard either from the pre-qualified bidders or some of the other folks that we talked to is this system it's a perfectly fine system, but it's just not one that we're interested in. It's kind of outside our bailiwick. So I think the uniqueness of the system did lead to, and we never, even for maybe the most kind of the most prime systems, we still never even see 10 or 12 different interested parties, usually a smaller amount. So when we got the 3 interested parties here, we were very pleased with that, especially given that they were 3 very good entities that were interested.
Okay. Yeah. Jim, hold on for 1 second. I hate to make you this, but could you mind coming down using the microphone?
Oh, sure.
And anybody else just stand behind them and.
Okay. I have a simple question. When you got started with the project, what was the anticipated value of the system? I see what the offer is, but based on revenue streams, projections, what did you think it was worth?
Yeah, this was in that range.
What was the number, sir? You say it's within the range. Like, are we at 80% of the range? Are we at 110% of the range?
Well, basically, when we valued this, when we did our evaluation of the system, and we looked at a municipal authority purchasing the system, basically right on the number. So again, we were pleased with we were very pleased with the number that came in.
If it hadn't been a municipal authority.
Michael Whitehead from 1883 Kimberton Road. I had several questions. I don't want to take too much time on this, and I also have a statement later if possible. Okay. Can I ask several questions?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, does anyone receive a sales commission for this transaction? Can you answer that?
Well, we have our fees that we're in a contract.
Are those based on a sales price, or is that just the standard fee? I know there was a fee for doing the consulting work and so on, but is this a commissioned?
Yeah, so our fee is broken out, it's kind of multi-phase, or some that's pure hourly to get us to a certain point, an hourly rate. And then if it gets to closing, a portion of our fee is also dictated by the size of the transaction, by the amount that the township receives.
Okay, so there's a real advantage to your recommending a sale of this township asset versus some sort of cost-benefit analysis. Is that right? Is that right?
No, that's not correct. So we looked at various different options, whether it's a lease, whether it's a sale, whether it's a license agreement. We looked at all the different options that were out there. And that was part of our initial phase to do kind of evaluation and the different alternatives. That was just a pure flat fee at that time. Then it was if the township decided to move with one of these other options, say with a sale, then we had that other contract, that here was our price for that. So no, our initial analysis was 100% unbiased with what the different options are for the township and looking at, again, looking at the different alternatives.
Initially, but at this point, obviously if you get a buyer, your fee is higher, is that right?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, based on the size of this transaction, our fee with this arrangement is actually lower than if it would just be a pure hourly contract.
Well, I won't belabor the point. I think I've made my point. Yeah, how much is the fee? Is there some percentage? Can you share that with us?
The total fee, we haven't even calculated. It's going to be less than $100,000. I honestly don't know.
Excuse me for one second, I just wrote that number down, so I'm holding you to it.
After this,
yeah, I mean, it's the same. It is the same fee if it's whether it's a lease or a sale. So it's.
Okay, well that's interesting then, because maybe we should consider a lease arrangement or some other.
Well, we did. We did consider that.
We did.
Okay, let me go on if that's okay. These aren't in any particular order, but we're not selling the land. We're just selling the actual operation of this, or the operating of the system. That people can use the existing equipment, right? Is that
Yes
right?
and no.
I thought you changed it to selling the land.
Joe, you want to handle that one?
Yeah, it's the sale of a combination of facilities, in some cases land, and in other cases just an easement. It depends on the particular plant and how it lays out.
It's a significant amount of land, isn't it?
Yeah, but anything, if there's a lot of land and a small system on it, we're doing an easement for just the system that's on it. And any land, whether it be by easement or by fee simple, is going to have a provision on there that it's used for sanitary sewer disposal or open space and nothing else. So it's guaranteed to be open space forever in perpetuity or used for sewer treatment.
So, for example, you couldn't use it for community solar or anything else that would be quite beneficial to the townships. Would the operator have veto of any future beneficial use to the township in the future, since we don't own it anymore?
The operator doesn't have any veto, and the restriction that it be open space is a township restriction. The township can lift that if they so desire to do something else.
Joe, if I could jump in. Sure. The covenant actually states that any other township purpose, so it's open space or township use.
This is Rob Sevia from my office.
So Bucks is a public entity. Can they privatize this system later?
Yeah, I mean, potentially, Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority could be privatized. Yeah, we have no control over that. I mean, right now, they are a municipal authority, and they have been a municipal authority for quite some time.
Right now, all the sewage that is treated is generated by our township. Can they pump in sewage into our township and use our facilities for treating more sewage, and therefore, with the detrimental effects of that?
We are in the process, unrelated to this matter, of looking into our zoning ordinance to make that type of use very difficult to accomplish.
I'd like to sort of question this whole idea that that the township is trying to move in the direction of using our resources for core public services. To me, I think water and public health is a pretty core service. How do you think that sanitary services, which are in fact a public health function, why are those not part of public entity services? And you don't think those are core government services? I really don't understand that premise.
Well, I think one of the benefits of Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority and being a municipal authority, it is basically still staying in government hands.
What say would West Vincent citizens have influence? Obviously, if the township is running this entity and the service is bad or the rates are too high, we could come to the supervisors and complain and in meetings like this have an influence. If Bucks County, they may treat their own citizens well, but they could treat us very badly. What's to prevent that sort of thing? What kind of influence do we have? Particularly since, as you said, this is a non-regulated entity, meaning we don't have a public service, public utility commission or anything to complain to. I don't think, unless from what I just heard, I don't know.
Well, I think the protocol would be similar to now, just a different location. So just like you'd be able to come to West Vincent to discuss matters, now you'd be able to go to the Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority meetings to discuss issues as well. So you can't
that doesn't seem to.
Is there any government oversight?
But yeah, in addition to the Municipal Authorities Act, what Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority is under. So under that act, if they were to charge unreasonable rates, you would have a say, or you could have a say, a citizen could have a say in Commonwealth Court, I believe is the court. Really? That could take an action against them, yeah.
So if they dump an exorbitant amount of sewage into West Vincent, because it's easier for them politically than to use it in Bucks County, then we can go to the Bucks County meetings and complain about that, I guess, is what you're saying.
It would be an awful long pipeline.
Well, we don't know. They may be developed in other areas. Maybe it could be close, maybe not in West Vincent, maybe it's in some nearby community.
Not only does the Municipal Authorities Act protect us, but also we have full control over what's called the 537 plan. We retain control of that after this sale, and the 537 plan is sewage facilities planning. So where sewers go, how they go in, et cetera, are still within our jurisdiction and still solely our say, not anything to do with Bucks County. And that's part of the deal that's negotiated.
If this deal falls through, Plan B is probably private sale of the service. Is that right?
Well, there's plenty of different alternatives, one of which would unfortunately be increasing the sewer rents and putting about $1 million in capital improvements in the system. That's what we're facing, increased sewer rent and $1 million in capital improvements. We're trying to sell the system to an entity more qualified to handle that and keep sewer rents stable. There's always alternatives, but this is the most attractive alternative.
Well, I'd just like to know if this company has studied the differences between private water and wastewater treatment rates, even locally and nationally, versus public rates. There's a huge difference, right?
Sure, and again, remember, Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority is, in your example, considered a public entity. So again,
I understand that.
Right. So no, there are differences. There's wide differences even among the public entities out there. There's wide differences between the regulated companies as well. So yeah, we have a pretty good handle on where the rates are.
Usually public utilities like this offer much better rates and better service than private entities, isn't that right?
I think it really depends. I mean, here you are dealing with a very good entity. Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority is a very good entity.
I'm not questioning that. I'm saying that public entities usually do a better job with this sort of thing, isn't that right?
When you say public, you mean like a Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority?
Bucks County or West Vincent or anybody else, yeah. Or Westchester or Phoenixville.
I think it's case by case. I mean, I think Aqua has a very good experience, very good capabilities.
And very high rates.
Their rates are higher than Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority.
Okay, well, I'll get into that when I make my, thank you very much.
Hi, my name's Jim Fendrick. I'm a resident on St. Stephen's Green, Barrington Lane. We submitted a list of questions, and I could go over them, or can you guys just...
We got those on Friday.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, we didn't have, well, I don't think two of us picked up our mail until this morning. So we're familiar with it. Joe, how would you like to handle that?
You can raise each issue and he can address each one if you like.
Okay.
Or I'll chime in when I help.
Go for it.
All right. So one of the things, I think it was commented earlier about you sell the sewer system with the land on it. With St. Stephen's Green, there were 2-acre lots. A lot of it was, how should I say, built on 1-acre lots, and then the additional acreage was preserved for open space. What I heard was not a hard guarantee that it would be maintained as open space.
Yeah, we're only giving an easement in St. Stephen's Green for the sewage facilities, not the rest of the open space.
So you're only giving easement for
Right.
the sewer facility access.
Mhm.
So in perpetuity, there will be no development.
Right.
Correct. That'll
Go
go
ahead.
up if you want. Brian knows how to do it. That should make it easier.
Maybe I should start singing.
That'd be fun.
So on question 2, we did some capital improvements on it. Initially, when it was built, it was faulty material, sand, and we improved it. So do the members of St. Stephen's Green get any benefit from the capital improvements they did to the sewer system, and will we be compensated for that?
Now, the township actually put in some capital improvements also, and your system's been running at a deficit, significant deficit, every year where the townships had to put in some general fund money to subsidize its operations, so there's no excess in your system.
So I noticed on page 6 of your presentation, you broke out Matthews Meadows and Stonecroft. Do you have similar information for St. Stephen's Green?
Yes, Matthews Meadow and Stonecroft are the two highest ones in the township, and they brought them down to a lower rate to match another plant in the township. All the other ones stay at the rate that they're at.
So I believe
So
St. Stephen's is...
your rent would not change at all.
So right now, we have that at $281 per quarter, and that's guaranteed to stay that way for at least the next 5 years in closing.
281, you said? Ours is 420 a month.
418, 420
That's water. Is that just sewer, or is that sewer and water? I'm sorry?
Water and sewer.
Yeah, we're just speaking,
That's the sewer.
we're just speaking the sewer, that 281, yeah.
So do we have the numbers broken out for St. Stephen's Green's water and sewer? Because I think it's just one bill we received.
Yeah, the water,
I'm sorry, my wife pays the bills.
well, I don't have the water bill handy, but again, those are gonna be frozen for at least, for guaranteed 5 years. So whatever the rates are currently, they're gonna stay that way, guaranteed for 5 years. And there's a good chance that they could stay that way for even longer.
Right, it's
And
our,
we'll put, the agreement is not finished yet. We'll put in the agreement specifically water, just so it's highlighted. So we'll cover that in the agreement.
yeah, it's our impression though that our fees are exorbitantly high. I do understand running in a deficit. Whether I think we are or not, I don't know, I don't see those numbers, but it seems that ours are high, and will it be decreasing, is the question.
Well, it's definitely running at a deficit, and if we held on to the system, we'd be increasing those rates, because you shouldn't be using general fund money to pay for sewer. Sewer revenue should support the sewer
The
expense.
current deficit is $45,000 a year.
So your rates would go up proportionately to cover the operating deficit. Versus Bucks will just absorb that and not increase the rent for 5 years.
Sorry for taking too much time reading. So with the money that you'll receive from the sale of this, is there any plans on how you allocate it within the township?
We haven't even gotten to the sale yet, so we haven't even discussed the allocation at all.
So is the plan to sell it, get the money, and then figure out what to do with it?
No, the plan is to get to this point, get over tonight, decide what we're going to do next, and then that'll be a high priority, to start digesting what to do with any funds. Is that correct?
And as I read the timeline, though, you tend to vote on this next week?
Next meeting.
At the earliest. At the earliest.
That's 2 weeks.
So you would vote on it without knowing what to do with the money?
Yeah, what
What
generally
to
happens,
do with money?
what generally happens is you, between the time you sign the agreement and when you go to settlement, and even after settlement, townships start to figure out what they're going to do with the money. Now, generally, it's the advice of PFM and others that you're getting rid of a long-term capital asset, you should invest in another long-term capital asset, such as roads, bridges, things of that nature. You don't want to sell a long-term capital asset and fund an operating deficit. You want to put it into something that has a lifespan to it.
I agree wholeheartedly, but human nature is, ooh, I need more police, I need more,
Well,
and then we're writing more tickets.
it would be strongly recommended that we don't go that route.
So, to I guess follow along the previous speaker, what guarantees are there that this new entity won't add more units to the systems?
Well, the units added to the system.
Or EDUs, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, some of these systems can accommodate some expansion, and it would have been expanded if the township owned the system. But as far as new units and new units coming on board, that's dictated by the 537 plan, which is a sewage facility plan voted on and decided by the township and then approved by DEP. That's what plans where sewers go and to what extent and how to sewer the township appropriately.
So specifically for St. Stephen's Green, will you be able to write in that no additional EDUs can be added to that system?
I don't know whether it can or can't at this point.
It can't, right?
Why not?
It can't handle it. Right, at this point, it can't handle it.
Well, I know it can't handle it, but, technology is a wonderful thing, and, 10 years from now, they say, hey, we're putting a new system that now happens, we can add, 30 more units, EDUs.
I guess they would be able to do that, if the 537 allowed it.
Like you would now.
Sure. Even if we owned it, we'd still, if there was a development that was going up near you and they need sewer and yours was the one that would handle it, that makes sense. It'd also probably lower your cost too, the more units on a system.
Well, it's like everything, we move to the area, so there's not much development.
Well, and that's why we have open space funds.
That's why I want to make sure that it stays open space.
And it is.
Did you have something to add, Brian?
The permits for each of the systems for the operation that are issued by the DEP limit the amount of flow that's allowed to go to each of the systems. And for St. Stephen's Green, Matthews Meadows, and Stonecroft, they are maxed out. There is no more permitted flow by DEP currently to allow to go to any of the systems. Weatherstone's fully allocated based upon the plan development, and Bruner is fully allocated based upon the plan development when it finally comes online. The only plant that's currently within township control that has any potential for expansion is Ludwig's Corner. And that plant there has to be significant infrastructure planned, designed, approved, and added to that plant in order to allow more flow to that plant.
What do you mean by Ludwig's Corner?
Griffiths Farm.
Excuse me, I'm not hearing the conversation back here.
I apologize, Suzanne. Do you understand?
What I didn't hear is what the unit was that could be expanded upon.
Griffiths Farm.
Okay.
The only sewer plant that currently is owned by the township that has any potential for expansion is Griffiths Farm. All the other sewer plants are maxed out at capacity based upon the operating permits as issued by PDEP.
And it now services the apartments, right?
Yes. At Griffiths Farm, we need a significant increase in infrastructure at the plant in order to increase its disposal and treatment capacities.
So on question 3 that I submitted was contribution to a capital fund. And do we have a balance for St. Stephen's Green for the capital fund?
Your capital fund would be negative.
Okay. Any idea how much?
Well, we'd have to look over how much we've been funding it over the years, but last year I think it was 45,000.
That's just operating, that's not capital.
Yeah, well, there isn't ever capital because can't make the operating cost.
Because we weren't looking for any makeup on that, we didn't bother calculating what the deficit.
How about the township as a whole?
Say that again?
The township as a whole?
Yeah,
Capital fund?
Let's go one at a time up to the microphone so we keep it orderly. Are you done with your
I'm
your
sorry,
question?
Almost, I'm just looking at my wife.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome to come up and ask.
I know I am.
Couple gentlemen in front of you.
They were talking about capital funds, and I just had a question. You didn't want to answer it.
No.
Good evening, I'm John Sal, I'm a resident of Weatherstone. I live on Sundance Drive. I want to clarify one thing, that this is not one system, it's 5 separate systems with a new system coming online. The current systems that are in place are significantly different in their technology, in their design, in their state of maintenance. So my question is, and I think it's been answered by the rates you've talked about, will the state of each system impact a rate increase when a new entity owns the operation because of the state of repair that the various systems are in?
Bucks County has estimated that they'll be putting $1 million into the system very quickly.
Okay, that leads to my next question. We've been paying in, as part of our fees, to a reserve account. What is happening to the reserves that have accrued? Understanding that some are in the negative side, I suspect others are on the positive side. Will the reserves be transferred to the new entity? Will they be held by the township? And if they're being held by the township, is that really fair to the folks that paid into that over time?
The transaction as it is structured now is that it will not be transferred to Bucks County. It'll go back to the township. What the township's doing with that, they have to talk about.
It hasn't been decided yet, John.
Well, it sounds like it has been.
No, it hasn't.
The last thing is, the Weatherstone facilities sit on open space. Is that an easement for the Weatherstone facility? Because it covers a lot of acreage in this transaction.
Yeah, it's just an easement for Weatherstone.
Okay. Okay, we're good. Thank you.
Pete Maniscalco from Barrington Lane, St. Stephen's Green. Most of information has been clarified. Just one thing, St. Stephen's Green is the only of the 5 that's operating at a loss?
Yes.
And do you know why?
St. Matthew's close, but I don't think it's gone negative.
There's another one that's
Very close. Very close.
Yeah.
You know why that's the case?
They're small systems.
Just attributed to the number of residents?
And probably design, old systems, old systems.
Old systems. Just for the record, when I moved into the township 13 and a half years ago, our sewer and water rates here were more than double what I was paying in central New Jersey. And I just wonder why, I have that effect. And true, they stayed constant, about $420 a quarter for both water and sewage. But with that high amount compared to some other entities, I'm having a little trouble finding out why it's operating at a loss.
Because of the system design and maintenance it requires for the number of houses that are on it.
And, all right, so
There's
basically it
nothing-
comes
yeah,
down to numbers.
It comes down to numbers
Okay.
and design.
All right, thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Galt of Aqua, Pennsylvania. I'm actually a resident of East Vincent next door. Met some of the folks up here. My question is, will the township be receptive to counter offers?
Can you stand a little closer to the mic?
Sure. John Galt of Aqua, Pennsylvania. Question is, will the township be receptive to counter offers? And the reason I ask is because last time we were talking in August, we were talking with folks in this room about what the number might be. It was much higher than the current one being presented. And we were talking about rate increases, and we understood that that was something that was not palatable, absolutely understanding. Seems that the situation has changed, and you're voting soon. Will you take counteroffers?
I can't imagine why we wouldn't, but I don't think we're
have any
expecting any.
counteroffers?
Let me put it another way. We would be interested in presenting a counteroffer.
Who's we?
Aqua, Pennsylvania.
That's
Which I can
contrary,
speak for.
it's
That's
contrary
interesting.
to the information
Yeah, we were
we
told
received
by
from
Aqua,
Aqua.
Pennsylvania that you weren't interested in it.
Have you talked to your superiors
That
about
confuses us
this?
a little bit.
Yeah. The
Your
person
president-
they were
you're
talking
talking
to
your
about
president?
Pennsylvania. Yes, I work for our president. I'm our business development director for the state. The last time we were talking in August, the number was more than double the current Bucks County offer.
Well, we're all yours then.
That's not, yeah, absolutely understood. And so we weren't aware of any any offer from Bucks. Now that that's the case, that's obviously more information on the board. We would be interested in proposing a counteroffer. For instance, one piece of information you're probably asking yourselves is, what's our, when's our rate case schedule, et cetera. If the township were to go with Aqua, our next rate case isn't until 2022. So rates couldn't go anywhere until then.
Well, we've dealt with Aqua, many different sales, and we've had a good experience with Aqua. It's a reputable company.
Yep.
And they were on the short list. But our information was that Aqua wasn't interested and wasn't going to put in a bid.
Sure.
And that's been told to us several times. So
Yep.
if you're interested, I'm glad you're interested. I'm glad that you're at the table. You communicate with us right away.
Yeah.
But you were one of our prime people to bid on this,
Oh,
and you voiced no
absolutely.
interest.
Absolutely. Let me clarify. The numbers that we were talking about were much higher than current. So at that point, we didn't want to put an offer out there that would, be below what expectations were, what we understood were expectations from the township. Now with this in place, we have to know where expectations are. We would be happy to put in a counteroffer and would look to do so. December 4th is a tight time frame for sure, but we could certainly look to do something. And I have authority from Aqua to speak for that.
Now that Aqua is apparently interested.
I would also point out the River plant by itself, which is new, is worth $2.5 million. Is it not?
That's to construct it.
To construct it, yes. So in anybody's rate base, it was worth $2.5 million. The only other thing I would point out is, if it's an authority, will West Vincent get a seat on Bucks County's board?
No.
No. So with that, you have no say over any potential rate increases from Bucks except to file a lawsuit.
Would we get a seat on Aqua's board?
And yet,
Are you offering a seat on Aqua's board?
I am not
and
authorized.
to be candid with you, so you're not misleading the audience, it is easier to sue a sewer authority over rates than it is to go to a PUC hearing and try and control the rates for Aqua.
Yes.
So it's much easier to have say over rates with an authority than a regulated company. But I'm thrilled that you've come forth tonight. I don't know why it took till tonight to do this. I'm thrilled you've come forward now that you've heard the number.
Sure.
And then you should put it out to bid for all three and see what happens.
Yeah, I think that's useful information. It really is. The number we were talking about was higher, and we didn't want to offend anybody with a lower number. We voiced a lot of the same points that you guys have talked about today. Completely understand. We can be forthright about rates, what our rates are. Our average sewer rate in the state is actually somewhere in the $44 a month neighborhood, by the way. It varies.
If you're telling us that you're gonna put in a bid that is double of what we're entertaining and lower rates.
Well, you're making this real easy for us.
We would love to go that process, but then when it goes out, don't turn around and not bid and blow Bucks County's interest, because you're gonna really screw us up. But if you're telling me you're interested.
Aqua didn't bid to begin with, and it's surprising that you're coming in this late.
My intent, as I said before, as I lived next door, I wanted to see what the update was, as I understood this from tonight. I wasn't aware of Buck's offer until just now. I completely understand where you're coming from and where you probably think I'm coming from. I did not know that below a certain threshold, which was about double the current offer.
Let's not hold up these good people in the audience.
Of course. Okay. Thank you.
We'll get back to you very shortly with what we're going to be doing.
Please do. Thank you.
Wow.
I'm Joe Antelosi. I live in Matthews Meadows, 21 Braeburn. I got a couple questions for you guys. First of all, I think you did a good job in the analysis, and I think the recommendation seems to make sense. You know, monetizing this and getting $4 million, that's a good number, I think. You know, now we're hearing it's going to be more like 6 or 8. So we're happy about that. I don't have any problem with what you guys are doing. I think you did a great job. My concern is there's $1.5 million in the proprietary fund. Is that correct, guys? She said
You mean
yes, you
capital
say no?
reserve? Capital reserve shows about $1 million, but then there's revenue.
Operating
Right, we don't know what the
funds.
expenses are yet.
Yeah, correct.
What does that sheet represent?
Right, well, yeah, I don't know how much you transfer each year over to the capital reserve. It's not fixed in there. I mean, it's not like you pay $200 towards your.
But it's
Is that representation accurate or not?
Yes, more than likely.
What is the number? 1,500,000?
1.5 at this point, yes.
Okay. So my understanding is that we'll generate, what, $4 million from this? That's the floor.
Right, floor.
So we're at $5.5 million. Isn't it true that like we, the homeowners, HOAs, dedicated these systems to you guys? We gave you these assets?
No,
The developer did.
the developer did.
Really? In the case of Matthews Meadows?
No, not sure.
The association did. Okay, so.
Oh, wait, so you paid for the system?
Yeah.
Not the developer?
Well, the developer paid for it out of the proceeds from the sale of our homes. So, yeah, and then we operated for 10 years at half the operating expenses of the township. Then we dedicated the township. The township drove up the cost 105% in a 10-year period. Then you guys decide you're going to sell this and monetize it and not reimburse us for the asset that we gave you. So I think where the real issue is in my mind, guys,
You're still using the asset though.
Guys, it's our asset.
Someone else built the
No, you
asset
dedicate
for
to
you.
the
We
township.
paid for it.
Guys, I don't care. We paid for it. If we could have done this deal with Aqua or the authority, right? You guys are doing the deal, I think, on our behalf, so we should at least be the recipients of the proceeds, not you. Shouldn't go in the general fund. It just seems like a violation of trust, doesn't it? Am I missing something?
Do you want the plant back?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll all take them back, and we'll sell them. And we'll take the $4 million and the $1.5 million, and we'll deal with it. Yeah, I think we will.
And you'll take all the plants, right?
No, they're
Yeah.
there.
No, you guys want to do, let's do this transaction soon.
He wants
And then
the
we'll
$4
do the
million.
transaction with Aqua or with Bucks County. And we'll keep the proceeds. We'll do the deal. That's all I really have to say, guys. This is the problem I have with what's going on here. It's not fair.
I agree.
Hello. Oh, excuse me. You have to answer that question before you do this deal. What are you going to do with the proceeds? That has to be answered, guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much, seriously.
Okay, I have a totally different perspective. I don't live in one of the developments that uses the sewer plants. I'm the master of foxhounds for Kimberton Hunt Club. And the way that my interest is the open space at Weatherstone. So I had a really good meeting with Brian and Erica, because I've been the squeaky wheel as this has been going on the last couple months. And they informed me of a lot of this could happen, but we don't know until the buyer. At that point, they didn't know who the buyer would be. So my interest is in the trails and the open space at Weatherstone. I don't know that the other developments have many trails. If they do, they're probably eased. Weatherstone has lots of trails through it. One is eased all the way around the perimeter. But if you've seen me and my crazy menagerie of dogs, 99% of the people in the township enjoy this history that we've had. The club's been here since 1870, and hopefully we'll keep going. And that's because of all our neighbors that allow us to come through their backyards and enjoy the history of the tradition of the sport. My point is that in our conversation, they didn't know what would happen and what it would look like when the new authority bought it. They said that, they being Brian and Erica, that the new authority is going to have to probably provide more security than what West Vincent Township has to provide. So I know that area intimately. I know where the drip irrigation is. I know where the spray irrigation is. I know where the deer hunters sit. I know where the trails go. I see hikers in there. I see deer hunters. I see other people on horseback enjoying the property. But that may change. If it's more security, the little nice post and rail fence around the lagoons might be a tall chain link fence. Do we know? It might be a fence along Weatherstone Road so that you can't access it except for the trail easement. It might mean that me and my dopey hounds that like to chase a fox that they never catch can't go through there. So do you know any answers now that you're talking with Bucks County? What that's going to look like?
No.
Security?
We have not gotten to that point yet.
Okay. So I would ask, and I'll be giving you a written letter, but I would ask that you consider all the people in the township that use all that open space for lots of different things. And I realize that somebody in Bucks County doesn't really care that, we need more than just the little easement around the perimeter, which is great for a hike, but not great for, when you're trying to get from destination A to B in a hurry. There's deer hunters, there's hikers, there's lots of people that use the property, and I understand the security. But I think those of you in Weatherstone that are looking out onto those beautiful open fields that you can't see the drip irrigation under the ground, you might be looking at a big fence along the road. So that's something that you need to consider, and something that I'm going to keep being a squeaky wheel, because West Vincent Township, we're the only remaining hunt club around, and since 1870, I think that's doing well. So I don't want this would harm our sport a great deal. Yeah. Thank you.
Can we make sure we'll request as best we can?
Oh yeah, we'll check on that.
Hello. First, let me just say I think it's a great place to live and great place to be, and thank you for the services you provide. This is an interesting night. I think there's a bunch of people, myself, that feels a little uncomfortable. All right, I mean, just say it openly. Gentlemen, and I mean this in respect to Steve Tolman, Matthews Meadows. I will say to you, if you want to have confidence in you, I hire a lot of consultants on a regular basis, and I would expect that you would know what you're going to get paid. If someone asks you that question, it's an easy number, right? I don't know why you don't know that, or why we don't know what this is costing for your services, the hourly plus your commission, but you want to know that. I also say, I think what Joe said is correct. We dedicated this to the township. I don't think there was intent of monetizing this asset. I think it's kind of interesting that you can. Kind of like the idea of getting $4 million into the township instead of spending $1 million. Apparently you've done the diligence and we have $1 million of repairs that are needed. Is that right?
That's what Bucks County is called.
I don't know, because my sewer's working pretty good, but it needs $1 million repairs. That's a worry. I hear that and I go, wait, red flag. Why do we need $1 million of repairs? Maybe it's up maintenance or something like that. Fine. But when you're monetizing for $4 million, plus they have to put $1 million, so it's costing them $5 million for this, right? I get the math right?
So all I look at being over at Matthews Meadows and say, well, wait a second, what happened here? Did we overpay you? Did we overpay the township? Well, you're saying it's in arrears, right, that we don't pay enough, or we can't.
No, you're break even, I think, right?
Break even.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we're break even and we've paid you, then maybe the third party we used was overcharging us because somebody wants to pay $5 million now. And they're gonna have to recover that $5 million, right? I mean, they're running a business, somehow they gotta recover that. And I look at that and go, how are they gonna do that if we're paying, well, whoever's in Matthews Meadows is gonna pay less, which is great, by the way, thank you, I'm happy to pay less, but it's confusing to me. How are we paying them less? They're paying $5 million for it. How are they gonna recover this? Because if I do the math, there's 611 units in your handout, right? And that's about 8,000 something per household that they have to recover, but yet they're gonna drop some of the fees. So either these guys are super efficient, I don't know this company, I have no idea who they are, and maybe they are really good. Or maybe the 5-year goal that they say it's fixed, they say, whoops, we did our homework and there's more work to be done than we thought. Sorry, folks, we're gonna charge you a bigger rate. I read the contract, I have no idea what's in there, what the guarantee really is. Or after the 5 years, sorry, it has to double because we didn't realize. That's kind of the worry, right? I mean, it's a little bit of unknown, that wasn't the intent, and if you're going to sell it, I kind of feel like, well, I think Joe's right. Give it to the people who paid for it. Then I would say, okay, fine, I'm going to get X settlement, and I'm stuck with this new entity that you want us to move to, fine. But at least if I get charged more in the future, I got some compensation for it. I don't mind, I kind of like the idea of the money coming in the township, but I don't want to be the one who has to finance that in the future versus the whole township. If it goes towards whole township services, but the 611 homeowners that paid for it end up getting stuck with a bigger bill. And I don't think you can, I mean, can you guarantee us that won't happen?
We can guarantee the 5-year rate freeze, yes.
So that going to be from the township, you're going to say that won't change, you'll guarantee that.
Absolutely.
What happens on year 6? Because I know how finance works, I know that they can take this, basically it turns into an amortization schedule for them, but what I don't want is year 6, all of a sudden, sorry, it has to double.
Right. I mean, in year 6, the rate will then be the higher of the current rates in the township or Bucks County Water and Sewer.
I read your thing, and it says Bucks County Water and Sewer, right? So that's what their rates are, what they want to charge for that. That's just not clear, right? And that it seems that when we look at it, I don't know what's really going to happen.
Could we come up with that number?
Well, I think, again, going back in history, when we talked to Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority, we saw what their historical rate increases, I think about 1%, less than 1% per year over the past 10, 20 years. When we talk to them about future projections, again, no one can guarantee where they're going to be, but they expect very similar results going forward.
I'd love to see their financial plan, if you give that to us, because what doesn't make sense is how we run break even or just making it, or we've got troubles because we have $1 million to put in, right? And all of a sudden they're willing to pay $5 million and charge us less. The math somehow seems to be confusing to me because it doesn't add up.
I think you definitely go to their website and get their...
I want to go to their website. I'm asking you as a consultant, when you're going to present this, I think you should ask them to present their plan, their financials. How are they making this work? And I don't just ask the township just to say, let's be honest here, where this resource asset came from. It came from 611 homeowners out there that paid for it, not the township. And so the debate can get really, uncomfortable here. I think I'm happy for you doing it if you're moving it to somebody who's more efficient. I get that. And if they're better, and it's off your plate, and you have other things to do, I get that as well. What I don't get is to see why there's a windfall associated with it. It was never the intent. And, the exposure ends up with the 611 homeowners, not with the township in totality. So that seems to me a little bit off balance. I think you ought to think about that when you proceed. Thank you for taking my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Meredith and I live on Westover Lane. A lot of our community speaking tonight lives in the homeowners associations and are directly affected. I'm speaking, I'm not in a homeowners association, and I don't know how many of our community members actually knew that this was going on. Also, being across the street from the Weatherstone community and I'm speaking from the area being very scenic. There are a lot of walkers, bikers, hikers, horseback riders. I'm also a member of the Kimberton Hunt Club, so I'm speaking from that aspect, very avid horse person. And you see all of the people in the community outdoors enjoying the area. And so I would ask that you would consider preserving the land, open access to those trails for those purposes, but also keeping the scenic aspect of the area and for the people that enjoy the outdoors. We don't want to see the big fence go up. It's right down the street from the community garden, and this is a completely different topic than the financial concerns, but this is the country. A lot of people moved here. I grew up in a completely different area out of the state, but I'm in this area because it is the country. I'm not in the middle of Philadelphia, so you don't want to see big structures going up, and you don't want to see the area being changed. Another along the same lines, and this is the last thing I'll say, is the wildlife. There are all kinds of animals that run through the property, not just foxes, but deer, just all kinds of animals, and that just preserves the area. And I know some people feel differently about that, but it's really neat to look out your window and see the hunt riding through your property, or look out the window and see a deer, and just preserving the countryside. Thank you.
As I said, I had a statement too, and if the supervisors in the audience would bear with me, I thought about this issue a lot, and I think there's a lot of history involved with this, and let me share with you some of my thoughts, if you'd entertain me. Here in Pennsylvania, we use the Old English word Commonwealth to refer to ourselves. This is a term that was derived from the Old English phrase public weal, which means public well-being. After the English Civil War in 1668 severely limited the powers of the king, the Kingdom of England was renamed the Commonwealth of England, with a common saying at that time: better things were done and better managed under a commonwealth than under a king. The idea being that society was better managed when power was vested in the people instead of the monarchy, that is, instead of with a small group of nobles. It is therefore likely no coincidence that Pennsylvania kept that term after its own rebellion against the British Crown. I will get to the point here. In 1987, Margaret Thatcher was famously quoted as saying, "There's no such thing as society," turning the Old English concept of a commonwealth upside down, meaning that there are only individuals, that there is no such thing as a public interest or a public good, only private interest. Instead of commonwealth, in Thatcher's world, we have private wealth. I don't live in any of these developments. I have my own well, I have my own sewer, but I care about my fellow citizens. But today, following the idea of Margaret Thatcher, there's a widespread belief, fostered quite deliberately, and I'm hearing it here by well-founded think tanks and lobbyists of a certain persuasion, that all things government are inefficient and wasteful, that markets solve all problems, and that most, if not all, government functions should be privatized, except the military. I saw a certain sense of exuberance here when our hard-won assets are suddenly going to be sold off for a short little 5 years, and people in this room are going to get screwed. Maybe not in the first 5 years, maybe so, but later.
There are those who think that all government functions should be privatized except maybe the military, the police, and roads, if not even these. Some people think that all government is almost always tyranny and the private industry always benevolent, or at least beneficial. I don't think the vast majority of the population of this township subscribes to this ideology, but in my view, there may be people in the Board of Supervisors who do not believe in the public good or in the positive role of good government fomenting the general welfare, except perhaps in its absence. The mania for privatization of all things public, of privatizing the commons, has extended to areas where economics has historically called for public ownership, or at least heavy regulation, in those areas called natural monopolies. Those are sectors where it's more efficient to have a single or few entities providing a service, such as the electricity grid, water, fire, sewer treatment, cable TV. It doesn't make sense to develop redundant infrastructure in these kinds of services, and that's why these are regulated. So what about the idea that government should not be in the business of providing services, that these are better done by private entities? What does the data tell us about that? Just look at water and sewage, for example. Do private utilities charge more for water and sewer service? Yes, I've seen studies of this. Compared to local governments, private utilities charge the typical household 33% more for water and 63% more for sewer service. We see that here locally. West Vincent charges an average of $144 for an average household, $144 for sewer and water. We happen to own an apartment building in East Pikeland that's all private. We pay over $200, almost 3 times that. Are private water utilities more efficient than public utilities? No. Private utilities, by an econometric analysis that I can show you the citations of, are actually less efficient. Does privatization reduce the cost of water and sewer projects? No. How much do profits and taxes affect the cost of water service? They're not. Aqua's not telling you that. By studies that this article cites, just taxes and profits, dividends, and can add 20 to 30% onto the operation and maintenance compared to a publicly owned entity. And what about the cost-cutting measures employed by private operators in order to increase their profits? When private operators attempt to cut costs, they often use shoddy construction materials, ignore needed maintenance, and downsize the workforce, which impairs public service. On average, more than 1/3 of water utility jobs are lost after privatization. Such neglect hastens equipment and breakdowns and increases replacement costs, which the public must pay. And let's get down to this particular meeting. I take particular issue with 2 points brought up in a key sentence in the notice that was sent out regarding this meeting, which said, the township has undergone this study in an effort to determine whether or not selling the system to a third-party entity would allow the township to best serve the public by the existing water and sanitary sewer business, in quotes, and instead focus its resources and energy on core government services. I have 2 major problems with this sentence. First, township government is not a business. It is a public service. A business is organized for one and only one purpose, to generate profits to private individuals. And I would hope that West Vincent does not fit into that category. But I think these gentlemen may be maybe has some questions about that. And let's talk about that second phrase, core government functions. We can go clear back to biblical times and Roman engineering to think about that the most core of government services in London in the 19th century were drinking water and sewers. Why? Because these are core functions crucial for public health and well-being, much more so than, say, roads, police, or parks. What core functions are the supervisors talking about here? We don't know. Later, the letter says, we are sensitive to the needs of our residents in working to keep utility rates reasonable while ensuring there is appropriate investment in the system's infrastructure. Is this sentence just a pro forma statement anticipating the arguments against this sale? Let's analyze it a little bit. Why would a private or public entity invest in purchasing these assets? The gentleman from Aqua was quite excited about the possibility of purchasing these assets. Why? Because they can over a long term generate a very serious profit from this sale compared to what the current situation is.
Could I ask you about this?
I'm wrapping it up. This sale will be forever. Whatever money is raised will be far less than the value of the assets. The apparent windfall once the apparent windfall is spent or squandered, the citizens of the township will be easy prey for whoever manages these former township assets. I'd like to close with a little piece of a poem from a 17th century Old English folk poem, and I think it's very appropriate to read in this Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. The law locks up the man or woman who steals the goose from off the commons, but leaves the greater villain loose who steals the common from the goose.
Thank you. Brian Curry.
Yes, I'm Brian Curry. I live on Blackbush Road. I'm not on any of the systems here. And I don't have a statement. These are questions that weren't answered or asked by others. Point of information for the people that are saying, I'm just learning about this now. There was a presentation in 2016 where these people were hired. They did a presentation of what the process they were going to go through. So, you know, this has been out there for a while. Further, if you've been looking at the bills list, which are published by the township every month, there's bills that show up from these folks periodically, again, over that interval. So the costs have been opened, they're visible. You know, the final amount they get on percentage of the sale hasn't been visible. Maybe it's available if you look at the contract, I don't know. But there has been some visibility here. It's not like a surprise where they just trotted them out there. The question I have is rates. Are these rates on a township-wide basis, or are they on a system-per-system basis?
So the rates will be frozen on a system-by-system basis as they currently are. Then, once we get past that 5-year rate freeze and we get to the point of the contract where it's the greater of the township rates or Bucks County Water and Sewer, then as each one of these individual systems, as their rates, they would then blend in. If we ever hit that crossover point, then they would blend in with Bucks County's general rates, kind of on a system-by-system basis. So maybe said another way, so Weatherstone rates are the lowest rates of the 5 different systems.
Okay.
So based on where Bucks County Water and Sewer rates are right now, there's a potential that maybe by year 10 or 11, somewhere in that ballpark, based on some projected rates of Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority, that's the crossover point of where the Bucks County Water and Sewer rates may exceed the township current rates. So then the Weatherstone rate will then fold into the general Bucks County Water and Sewer rate. But the other 4 systems will stay their individual rates until the Bucks County rate catches up to their rates as well. If you,
I think I understand. What you're saying is that Bucks County has a blended rate for all the systems they operate right now.
They have a couple different regions, but yeah.
It's a uniform rate they charge, though.
Yeah.
Okay, and then somehow the rates inside the township would roll into that, as you described there.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does the township have a book value of what the systems we have right now, what their book value is?
We have cost estimates from the actual escrows when the developers put the systems in, which goes into the book value.
Can you roll out what that number is approximately? Ballpark value?
Well, it's different for each system. Yeah, we would have to, I mean, I don't think you.
Yeah, we don't have
to get
that.
it for you,
Yeah,
but
we
we
don't.
got it from these escrow documents when the systems were dedicated over to the township. Some of them were pretty old. They had to dig through, the township officials had to dig through and find these documents, but we use those documents as the original cost of the assets.
But do we have an overall value of what is the overall value of plants?
Yeah, we can get that for you.
And
it's in the escrow agreements.
This would be when they were dedicated to the township, not what they would have been depreciated down to. They're based on their condition or anything else like that, correct?
Well, the book value would be reflective of the depreciation.
Okay. Would it also reflect condition?
No, it would just be the depreciation.
The book value would start at the escrow amount, so if it was $1 million, it'd be $1 million, depending on the estimated useful life of that asset. Let's say it's a pond or something. It would be 30 years.
Got it.
Okay? So then the depreciation would go every year. There'd be a certain amount of depreciation that would go in the bucket. The book value would get less and less every year.
Got it. I understand that part. Has Park and Recs been talked to or contacted about reserving areas for trails or anything like that, or easements for trails on these lands if they get transferred over?
I believe they were, correct?
No.
No.
Parks and Recs was never asked about trails for these.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
No, we don't say that. There's no talk about reserving specifically on any of these.
Not anything specific.
The planning
I
commission.
think it's what is existing, in use existing today for trails.
Well, the reason I ask that is because there are proposed trails on some of these, and there's also a number of, I'm going to say, dead-end trails where they run from the road, they kind of run to these areas, and then nothing happens. So there could be a trail there. Barb made the comment that, there's people who use these things. And again, Park and Recs related, has there been feedback of, making some reservations for that?
There has been discussion with Parks and Recs in the last month and also through the Phoenix Regional Council, I've requested that they review maps and been told they have. But apparently what am I trying to say? The last couple of weeks, these particular trails around the systems, I don't believe they've had a chance to get with Erica and
These are, yeah, if I may, I believe the issue was actually existing trails and trying to preserve those trails, because there was a public comment made about trails in existence today. And so as a working item in looking at that, we looked at a perimeter for certain trails that are in use, and then other trails, as was brought up by the Kimberton Hunt, that we may or may not be able to accommodate for as part of an easement formally. I think that's part of that discussion.
Joe was part of that discussion,
Right.
because it was the three of us talking about how to protect those trails if the property was sold.
Brian's question was Parks and Recs.
Yeah, and I'm just directed, do we have some formal communication back and forth documenting where Park and Recs is and, what they want to, have reserved for them or anything like that? Or provisions for that?
Apparently not.
Okay. the people that are currently operating these plants for the township, how are they picked out, identified, chosen, whatever?
Erica, you want to handle that?
Go ahead, repeat
The
that for me
contracted
again, Brian.
maintenance.
Oh, for contracted maintenance?
How are they selected?
We've got these people that we pay, you know, have the bills.
Sure.
And how are they selected, you know, to operate these plants? And I'm going to say that I've looked through the bills list long enough that I know some of them precede your time.
Oh, yes. During, when the plant was constructed, typically a consultant had to be hired to come on and train, learn the ropes with the plant, and as far as the professional services, we have two in the township that operate, one plant at Ludwig's Corner and the rest under one contract. And so it really depends on the nature of the plant, and so they were procured as a professional service during that transition period when the plant got dedicated to the township. As far as any other operating contracts and that sort of thing, or maintenance contracts rather, that's handled by the township in terms of, let's say it's mowing grass or, you know, taking care of some other things, electricity, you know, those things are, that's a township defined.
Well, having looked at the bills, yes, I understand that part. I'm thinking about the people who have the operations contract going.
Sure.
And, okay, and those are appointed at some point or something like that?
They're not appointed, but they're contracted with.
Okay. That takes care of it. Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation.
We're going to ask to wrap this up in a few minutes for a second, and we'll come back. But
Get in line in case you cut off
yes,
the
please
line.
get in line. You wanna jump up?
No, that's good.
Thanks. Rich Sirik, Matthews Meadows. Question and a comment. Question. I know it's been asked a couple times. I'm not sure it's been fully answered. So your company is on both a consulting fee as well as a success fee.
Correct. Yeah, we basically had three different phases of our contract, and I don't have the contract in front of me. They're all a little different, but it was a flat fee. I forget what it was, $7,500 or so, for the analysis of whether or not to proceed. Then the fee, what we call phase 2 and phase 3 contract. Phase 2 is hourly, and to date we don't have a tally of how many hours.
I got you. But then at the end of the day, there's a success fee.
And then phase 3 for successful
which is
closing.
perfectly okay. I get it.
Yeah, well, again, I mean, we fully disclose all this when our contracts are voted on, and so for phase 3, for the successful completion of the transaction, then there is a success fee, and I want to say maybe it's around 1%, but honestly, I can't remember offhand.
Fair enough.
Those fees, both phase 2 and phase 3 phase, are 100% contingent on the closing of the transaction.
That's a success fee.
Well, no,
That's what a success fee is.
Well,
Closing the deal.
even all the hourly fees are as well.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Thanks very much. To the board, my apologies, I'm dumber than a stump. I truly am. But I sat here for an hour and a half or more listening, and I might have gotten it wrong, and my apologies. But I haven't heard one person come up and say, great idea. My question, what's your next step? Do you just do what you want to do? And I think I saw something about December 4th, and I wasn't lucky enough to get one of the handouts and all that, so my apologies. What's your next step when you sat here, and I could be wrong, maybe somebody said, I love it, but I don't think I heard it. What's your next step, guys?
The next step is going to happen in about 5 or 10 minutes. We're going to excuse ourselves to get a quick look-see in a private session and come right back out and let you know what those next steps are.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to hear. Thanks very much.
Yeah, I'll try to be quick. Just a comment. I was actually complimentary of you guys, and I'm coming off of that now because I can't understand how you can enter into an agreement and not know up front what the revenue is going to be for your company. And I can't honestly understand how many hours that you don't know. Are you the lead on this project?
Yes.
And you don't know how many hours you billed already to date?
We didn't bill any hours.
You don't know how many you accrued?
I have not looked at that, no. I mean, we are.
And you're the project manager?
Yes, I am.
What's the expectation, ballpark?
Well, again, based on the $4 million proposal we have from Bucks County, it's probably around $100,000.
That's commission on the deal, right?
That's total.
All in? So you expect this as a $100 million transaction, or pardon me, $100,000 transaction for you guys?
Based on the $4
Okay,
million proposal.
you can answer my question, thanks. But it just seems, just so you know, from my perspective, I can't speak for everybody here, you just seem a little evasive. Maybe because you just don't know the answer.
Well, no, I think the honest answer is, again, I mean, we're not focused on the fees. We had our contract approved probably about a year ago. I don't remember what was in our contract. I know what our hourly fees are. You know, they range from $275 per hour to $350 per hour, somewhere in that ballpark, depending on who's working on it. The success fee, I honestly haven't looked at it for over a year. We're focused on trying to get this transaction closed, not as far as how many hours we have accrued. Again, all of this, we have not billed the township one penny other than phase 1 study. It's all 100% contingent. So
I appreciate that.
the
Thank
fees
you.
are not a focal point of ours. Getting a successful transaction is a focal point of ours.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think I want to direct this to Erica. Just how much time is involved in managing these systems from an
Right.
operation perspective?
From an operation perspective?
No, I mean township, your time.
Oh, okay.
And your staff's time.
Sure. Well, we are responsible for all the billing. It's the budget management, coordination with the operators, coordination with our engineer. So in looking at all that, there's a portion of time, it's not overly burdensome, but it's certainly something where if we're going to be managing the system moving forward, I would suggest making some recommendations for some improvements. I've been here about 1.5 years now, so getting to know the system in the township in and out, you know, this is a worthy effort to look at this and analyze it properly.
So 1,000 hours a year? 100?
To
Do
estimate
you have any
that,
idea?
that's hard to say.
Did anybody ask you that question before?
Well, you're the first, that's okay.
Well, because the reason I asked the question,
Yeah, sure,
just so you
sure.
know, one of the goals of this project was to exit the business and to focus in on other activities.
Absolutely.
So if I would, from a business perspective, I would want to have an understanding of just how much of the asset, of my people assets I'm freeing up.
Okay.
And that doesn't seem like it was scoped.
Well, I will tell you that with that time, we'll put it up towards other projects and refining the township.
I think the second objective was accomplished from what I heard. For 5 years, all bets are off after 5 years. Seems.
The rate freeze is guaranteed for 5 years.
Right. And then this whole thing with monetizing, you know, where I'm concerned, we've got 600 homes that kind of paid into these operating fees and built this capital reserve, and you're going to generate $5.5 million from this transaction minimum, and it doesn't seem like the benefit's going back to the 600 people that built it, you know? And so I'm not sure that that is being accomplished. If that goal, generate upfront fees, is being, for whom? Did anybody ask the question, whom we're generating these fees for? The people that contributed, or for the general community? I mean, it seems like you would want to ask those questions before you initiated this.
First off, I disagree with your numbers. It would be
4 million plus 1.5, 5.5 million.
We have it at 1.1, that's in capital reserves right now.
5.1 million.
And we haven't decided, but we've talked about it briefly, where that money would go back to the capital reserve accounts and all those. That's probably one of the things Joe wants to talk to us about as soon as we get excused from this for a few minutes. But all that has to be decided, and we haven't.
It just seems like this is a done deal, guys. That's why I'm asking the question.
Well, it's not a done deal, but we brought it, we've been through this for 2 years, 2.5 years. We've got one bidder to the table out of how many, and maybe some good came out of Aqua showing up, but that's a little underhanded to come in after the bids are open and then say, oh, we're going to be double or triple that. Yeah.
Okay. I understand. Thank you.
Sarah. This lets Sarah have.
Well, if Joe had something. Okay, first of all, Brian, I agree with you. It's been going on for a long time. The trails and linkages I'm still concerned about, and I had brought it up to Erica, and not to Parks and Rec, because they are in large part existing easements on township-owned land. And So I was hopeful, as Joe had said, if the land was going to be transferred, it was going to have easements on it. So is it now that less of the land is being transferred, so we have more time to work out those trail paths and potential easements for trail use?
We've met with people over trails, and Eric and Brian met with other people over trails. Some of these trails are legal trails, some of these trails are not legal trails, and we're trying to accommodate as much as we can, the best we can.
Yeah, we're trying to make them legal trails so that they don't get close.
Yeah, but one of the trails circles the very edge of a disposal pond. That you're going to lose that. I mean, they aren't going to let you go around the very edge of the disposal pond.
Is that the one in open space B?
I don't know which one it is. It's 5 systems. Huh? Weatherstone.
And not the one further down Fellowship Road,
I
but
know
the one in Westover.
When we sat down, we had a general meeting of minds with those people that were bringing it to our attention. And we're trying to do the best we can to preserve existing trails that are not legal trails, but existing, without interfering with the easement we have to convey.
I'll stop on trails. Very early on, there was a question of the net of transfer costs. What do you estimate the transfer costs are? Because we were talking about a large number, but then you said net of transfer costs, so that gets subtracted out of that number you told us. What sort of range are those transfer costs?
For the transaction cost to actually close the deal, a few $100,000. And again, it'd be our fee as financial advisor, it'd be the legal team, and if there's any additional engineering fees associated with it.
And are there costs in the property transfer? Whatever is happening in transferring the plants to the new operators?
That would be a part of the
It's all
legal.
Yeah, it's all part of them. Yeah. So it'd be several $100,000 all total.
$250,000, give or take,
Yeah,
just a little bit.
300.
Okay. Joe, you mentioned something about improving the zoning ordinance to prevent the import of sewage for treatment into the township. Do we not already have that?
No.
If these plants are already almost at capacity, except for one,
we were looking at it for another reason, unrelated to the sale.
Well, you know, okay.
We do have occasional deposits made in the Weatherstone system by outside haulers.
Would you like to use this?
Yeah,
Partially
we
used.
were looking in the context of a totally different, unrelated issue.
Do we know about people who are importing sewage to our system now?
No, I'm not aware of that.
Huh. Next time you see it, Jim, let us know.
They were given permission.
Let's get on
Okay.
point.
Well, we should look into that, though. We should know who's depositing sewage in our system.
Yes, I was surprised.
And
by
where
that.
that sewage is coming from. I mean, if that's happening, we need to know about it.
I would like to propose that you put together a committee of residents to help you with that planning on what you're going to do with the funds when you get them. I think it would make people feel more comfortable about it, and of course, I would volunteer. I think I'd like to understand clearly that the option of not doing this, of not selling the systems, getting an outside entity to operate it, is that we would eventually or soon have to become a more formal West Vincent Township Water and Sewage Authority and would have to create more government here in the township. Is that part of the trade-off? If we don't do this, we're going to have to provide the services anyway?
This came about by us looking at our balance sheet on the sewer systems and going to raise just about all their rates.
Right, so that's what I'm thinking.
So that's what kicked off the discussion and the thought process. And
yeah, so I think it's useful to say that's part of the trade-off for the township is pay me now, pay me later, but we're going to have to maintain those. We're going to have to serve our residents. And so one alternative is to grow more government, and the other is to get somebody outside who's already got the expertise, the infrastructure, the billing systems. So, Joe, I like this idea. I might be the first one you heard say it tonight, but I like this idea. And I live...
There's one other thing, and that's the long-range cost of, like, the lagoons. Are we going to have enough money for that and other the expansion at Ludwig's Corner and so on, so.
Yeah, and I worry about those things too. And for the maybe minority of us in the room tonight who operate our own water and sewage system, they are not without cost. And for as long as your systems, any of them that are running a deficit, the rest of the township is helping to pay for those. So not all benefit. If there were a way to be equitable to Matthews Meadows and say you've invested a lot in this, frankly, the whole township is investing to some extent. And so I just wanted to say that. So, thank you.
We're going to entertain one more. Go ahead.
Okay. Jim Dysinger, Weatherstone. I understand that Weatherstone, besides having enough in its operating or payments, more than cover the operating costs of our system, and you're also able to put money in a capital reserve. When you say Matthews Meadows is breaking even, does that include putting money into a capital reserve? Is any other system able to put money into the capital reserve?
Ludwig's.
Which one?
Stonerise or Ludwig's.
Okay, just that one. Because we've heard in 5 years, Weatherstone, which is more than paying for itself right now at our rate, is going to more than cover their profitable increase after 5 years. I think there ought to be a more equitable way to get this balanced out. And, I mean, we ought to be all paying according to what we're using. And the issue I said about outside people, occasionally at the pumping station at the end of Linden, there is a honey dipper. I think the township truck's been there, but somebody unlocks the lid to let them dump in there. So, but I was always told it was approved by the township.
All right, look it up.
Promise to be very quick.
Oh, you can okay,
Okay.
yes.
But I just have to be plus. You can't turn away a guy
You
with
gotta
crutches, right?
nose you on up.
I'm not trying. It could be a good idea. I don't know, but did you look at any Better Business reviews or anything for this company? By chance?
I'm sorry?
Better Business Bureau?
For Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we got an RFQ package that had a lot of different information like that in it.
Did you get a good review?
Yeah.
Because I'm looking here, for example, I just typed in review of Bucks County Water and Sewer. Average Google review summary is a 1.2, 4 out of 5, and let's see, worst customer service, I honestly feel like I'm being overcharged. Next person, worst ever, my husband and I always pay our bill on time, but we didn't get the bill, and they want to say we haven't paid them. And then they want to send us a notice the second time when we then paid our bill, because they get their systems right. The water's not very clean. I have changed my filter every 3 months. I'm not even going to say the word they used here. The company is one of the worst to deal with. The supervisor has no compassion for their customers and probably deprived as a child. I'm not going to go on to there's not one decent, one person gave them 2 stars out of 5.
And Steve, are these recent reviews?
These are right here. I mean, I'm looking at.
But they're recent, like in the
let's
past
see,
6
5
months?
months ago, a year ago, 2 months ago, 3 weeks ago. I don't know. I just, you ought to take a look, maybe before deciding. Just maybe.
But thank you. You're going to excuse us for about 15 minutes tops, and we'll be right back.